Okay, this is a module called National Policy and Sri Lankan Economy. And here we have to learn about the national policies, mainly focusing on the energy policy, national energy policy and the transport policy. After that, we have to learn about the Sri Lankan economy and its present situation. And ISL has allocated 2 sessions for this module. And there will be a question in section 2, I think. And this every time this question, when I started preparing, I put 2 parts. One is national policy, and other part is Sri Lankan economy. That means you have to, if you are trying to attempt this question, definitely you have to thorough with the national policies and the Sri Lankan economy related things. Mainly here, no need to go through the detailed values. Like now, if someone asks what is the debt value of the Sri Lanka, or what kind of foreign loans we are having, but those values are not important. But you should know the present context. That's the main important thing. National policy is also likewise, but here mainly focusing on the national energy policy and transport policy. But we have to learn about the importance of having a policy. Okay. We'll go. My name is Buddika Samarasekara. I think I did one module last week also. Here today, and I think 8, we have to do this particular module. This is the expected outcome for this module. Potential for the development of Northeast and Southeast, forms of government, concepts of good government, government economic policy, fiscal policy, what is growth and development of an economy, balance of payment, inflation, education, employment, unemployment, social harmony, peace initiatives, war and terrorism, major constraint in resolution, hegemony by developed countries, and most of the things I am doing the international relations also, and there are some things I am covering in international relations module as well. Then you can include those things also into this particular question. Then energy policy, transportation policy, major infrastructure development projects in the pipeline, their objectives, justification and associated constraints, constitution, government structure and proposed electoral reforms, bribery and corruption, political and other influences. But we'll try our best to cover much as possible. And here I am first doing the national policy part, and later I will do the Sri Lankan economy, because some things related to the international relations as well. And we'll learn about the key policies. When you go and search in internet, you can see if you type what are the national policies in Sri Lanka, there is a national policy framework of the government consists of 10 key policies aimed at achieving the 4-fold outcome of productive citizenry, contented family, a disciplined and just society, and a prosperous nation. Mainly these policies were developed, I think, by 2019. Those are the latest policies. Now, if you go and go through the National Policy Planning Ministry, still these are the main policies of the Sri Lankan government, because the content of these main items are same as whatever the government prepare a policy. But only thing is the way of implementation. That's the issue. These are main headings. Priority to national security. That means every government, their main policy is to provide the priority to national security. That kind of thing may not change by government to government. Secure work environment, country free from drugs. not only the national security, they want to have a secure work environment, country free from drugs. Now I am here, I am not analyzing whether these policies are fully implemented or what kind of deviations to the policies. I think since you are matured Sri Lankan people and now you are living in Sri Lanka, you can understand what kind of deviations from these policy frameworks. These are just policies. You can see whether the government has taken necessary actions to implement these policies. Now, country free from drugs, is it true? That's the thing. Now, but that's the first priority in national security. First priority, the government has given the first priority as the national security. Then whether your working environment is safe or whether the country free from drugs. An efficient country free from corruption. That's also second national policy framework. These are main frameworks because they have adopted 10 key policies. Now, second one is an efficient country free from corruption. An efficient governance mechanism. Defeating corruption. State enterprises management policy. These are the things they identified because they think these state enterprises mainly leads to a corruption and they wanted to have a state enterprises management policy. When you go through these policy frameworks, they have developed all these policy frameworks. You can see whether these things are achieved or not. Then friendly, non-aligned foreign policy. Now, non-aligned means, now I think you know in the world there are two major parts. One is led by US and European countries. Then second part by the Russian Federation previously. And now we are having a China also, India. Now we are now friendly, non-aligned foreign policy. Now Sri Lanka is, okay, maybe someone can say, okay, Sri Lanka is fully dependent on China, fully dependent on India. Then whether our country is a non-aligned country or not. Okay, but our foreign policy should be non-aligned. New constitutions that fulfills the people's wishes. That's also there as a main national policy. Productive citizenry and vibrant human resources. People-centric economic development. Macroeconomic targets, new tax policies, cost of living, export crops. Now, whatever the things they mention, new tax policies are there. Whether it's people-centric economic development, that's the thing now you have to think. Okay. Now, previously, they didn't have a correct tax policy, but now they introduced the tax policy, whether it's a people-centric development. Now, whether they expect that kind of tax return from the people. That's the thing you have to think. Okay. Then number 7 is technology-based society, global innovation hub, IT entrepreneurship, citizen-centric digital government. They have identified the key 10 frameworks, that's true. And under that key 10 frameworks, they have subdivided so many categories. I have extracted only the main important thing. No need to memorize these things. I am not asking what are the 10 national policy framework in Sri Lanka. I won't ask that kind of question. It should be a generalized question. In generalized question, when you answer, you can include these kind of policy frameworks when you write your answers. Then development of physical resources. That's also very important. Then number 9 is sustainable environmental management. Now under that they mention, okay, national policies of how to develop the lands in sustainable manner. Lands, industries, waste management, biodiversity, settlements and cities, environmental educations. That's also very important. Now, I think now I am not biased to any political party or anything. Now, actually, this present president, he wants to implement a climate change university in Sri Lanka. That means, okay, that may be a good suggestion. Do not think about in the political moves or political agendas. Now, if someone say this is not related, this is not in our country policies, but it is in our country policies, because environmental education is identified as a sub-key policy element under the main policy item number 9 in the National Policy Framework Guideline. That means we have to have some institutions to learn about the environmental education. Now, actually, everyone is talking about the climate change. In Sri Lanka is an island. We have to concern about the things. Then we should learn those aspects. Then number 10 is the discipline, law-abiding and value-based society. That's also national policy, one of the national item in the national policy framework. Now, with that 10 item, we can see what are the sector policies. Now, here we learn about the key policies under national policy framework. Now, once the government identified this key national policy frameworks, individual sectors, they have to develop their own policies which should align with the national policy framework. Now, likewise, now I will give some examples and we will just go through these things. Here, no need to memorize anything, but once you go, while you reading this one, try to get the key points in these sector policies. Now, education, assuring that no child is left behind. Now, I think that's our main free education concept. In the education frontier, by ensuring access to quality and inclusive education, by encouraging 13 years of education, laying the foundation for creation of educated and disciplined nation, equipped with basic competencies and skills in order to achieve sustainable development based on knowledge-driven economy. Now, just go through this education sector policy. That policy will comply with so many national framework policy. Now, here you can see, if you go to the last line, achieve sustainable development. Sustainable development. Now, here, sustainable development, it's under here. That means this education sector policies that will support to achieve the sustainable development goal. Then they want to have the competencies and skill that will help to technology-based society. Then also they mention disciplined nation. Now, disciplined nation means law-abiding, disciplined, law-abiding, value-based society. That means that's the basic foundation for all national policy framework. That means education is the most important. Then higher education. Just go through these things, then you can understand how to link with the national policy framework. Higher education, enhancing the quality and relevance of the university education to produce professionally competent and capable graduates to meet socio-economic development of the country. What is the main objective of the higher education? Higher education to produce professionally competent and capable graduates to meet socio-economic development in the country. Now, these are sector policies. Now, in our sector, education may be the primary and secondary education, higher education means the tertiary education. Then again, maybe not only the universities, now they have initiated so many vocational training, skill development and vocational training institutes. Now you can see Univotech, University of Technology, and under that they are giving so many diploma courses, making every Sri Lankan skilled, enabling full employment in the global economy while improving their competencies, soft skill, and access to quality vocational education. Now, previously, maybe if you go back around, let's say 10 to 15 years back, we didn't have that kind of vocational training recognition in Sri Lanka. Previously, only maybe German Tech, maybe several technical institutes are there, but now not only the technical things, maybe the food industry, maybe the fashion industry, then these hairdressers, fashion designers, everyone can go through and learn this vocational training program. Then labor, now these kind of things you can refer under relevant ministries in Sri Lanka. Now under labor ministry, you can see what kind of sector policies. But normally these policies, now in our country, our main issue is policies will change due to maybe the government changes, or maybe the minister changes, or maybe sometimes state minister or deputy minister changes. That kind of level, our policies are changed. And these policies were developed by the National Policy Planning Ministry to give some basic guidelines. Whatever the minister or the officer is there, they have to follow these basic policy guidelines, protecting the rights of the workers and achieve healthy industrial relations. In this context, while enforcing existing laws and regulations, all necessary reforms will be made in the coming years to meet the emerging circumstances and to bring them in line with international best practices. Any perceived impediments to maintain good investment climate will be removed. Now, what is the main important thing having a good labor sector policy? We should attract the foreign investment. Now, let's say if our country now everywhere, for everything, people are doing strikes, protests, that kind of things, then no one will come and invest in Sri Lanka. But that does not mean these industries can do whatever they need. They have to protect the rights of the workers as well. Now, these labor sector policies, that they are trying to have a balance between the protecting the rights of the workers and the protecting the rights of the industries as well. Now, health sector, improving national health service, targeting a healthy nation with necessary institutional and policy reforms and increase investment on health, while recognizing the importance of coexistence of different forms of medicine and participation of private sector in health services. Now, likewise, we can go through what we'll just read some things. Under sports sector policy, you can say developing the sports sector to produce healthy nation covering the entire population, which may help to reduce burning issues of non-communicable diseases and making sports mandatory for all school children. I think that's the decision. Recently, they also requested every school children must do at least one sport. Okay. Now, that they want to introduce, because they think by doing a sport, these children will have a healthy lifestyle. Then culture and heritage, creating a virtuous and responsible and anti-corrupt society through promotion of culture sensitive to heritage management, giving freedom for artistic work. Then science, technology and research, building capacity and strengthening of research and development through intensification of advancement and dissemination, as well as application of the knowledge in state-of-the-art technology. That also a very important thing to develop a country. That means we should have our own research and development and our own innovations to conquer the global economy. Then information and communication technology, promoting local ICT products and services in the global market under digitization of Sri Lanka's economy. That's also a very important thing. Now, most of the IT professionals, they work in foreign companies. Maybe they work according to the foreign company rules and regulations, and they support and they bring a lot of foreign exchange into the country. But due to this present economic crisis, you can see there are a lot of people going out from the Sri Lanka. And most of these IT companies, they may not be able to survive with this present economic conditions. That will lead to that means now whatever the things mentioned in our national policy framework, but we may not be able to comply what they have promised. That's the issue. Then crop agriculture. Agriculture sector with eco-friendly innovative technologies will contribute to active, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, ensuring food security, food sovereignty of the nation, and to sustain the drive of competitiveness of agriculture and agro-based product in the international market. Okay, now you can see agriculture. Now, best example is introduction of organic fertilizer. Do you think is it acceptable with this national policy framework? Okay, with that words, that will be acceptable. That means sustainable. Give me a 1 minute, okay? Sorry, okay. Then this introduction of organic fertilizer into this cultivation. Now, do you think it's according to the national policies? Okay, maybe one side, if you say it's under sustainable environmental management policy. Okay, now we have to use the sustainable sustainable ways to produce our agricultural crops. That's true. But you have to ensure that it should be having a sustainable economic growth, ensuring food security and food sovereignty. Now, previously, Sri Lanka had 100, okay, we can say it's 100%. We managed to produce our own paddy within our Sri Lanka. Okay, maybe we may have import something, but most of the times we may able to produce our required quantity of rice within our country. But now, after introduction of this organic fertilizer into the paddy cultivation, we may have to bring rice to the Sri Lanka. then you have to incur more foreign exchange. Not only that, that had a severe impact on the food security. Not only the paddy cultivation, all the other agricultural-based cultivations also we have the same thing, and ultimately our country almost collapsed due to this particular decision. Okay, that does not mean when you want to go with the sustainable environmental management concepts, you should use 100% organic fertilizer or 100% environmental friendly things. You have to think holistic approach. That means overall approach. What would be the impact to the other sectors? What would be impact to the people? Now, main thing was rural areas mostly. These people, their main income they receive from this agricultural product. But due to their crops, they didn't have a sufficient money. Then whole in rural economy was collapsed. Okay, that kind of things may not happen if you follow a proper sector policy. Okay, that's a very good example. Okay. Now, livestock, increasing production and quality of livestock product to satisfy local demand and to boost rural income with objective of making our farmers capable to compete in local and international markets. Now here also very recent example you can see this livestock means this chicken poultry item, that means chicken and eggs. Okay, now what happened? Now eggs, they try to put so many gases notifications to control the prices, so many things, but still people having some issue whether we can buy it for the gazetted price or whether the gazetted price is acceptable or maybe justifiable to give a return to the local livestock farmers, or whether they are getting undue profits. Whatever the things, maybe you have to think the mass scale production as well as the rural level small scale production persons as well. Then plantation sector, fisheries sector. I am not reading everything. Main thing you can go and read, because otherwise I have to read all the things. Here I am telling now under this 10 national policy framework, key sector policies also identified by the National Policy Planning Ministry to give a guideline to a specific sectors. Then these sectors should manage to achieve at least these policies. Then lands and land development. That's also a very important thing. Now, when normally every country lands are belong to the government, and government should develop the lands in a transparent and proper way that should support to achieve higher economic gain, food security, decent living of people while maintaining equity and ecological sustainability. Now, you can see most of the foreign companies, they want to get the lease agreements with the Sri Lankan governments to do some cultivations and other things. Now, when they give that kind of thing to as a lease agreements, then at least they should see whether their proposal should comply with this kind of sector policy. Then industries, supporting private sector development, especially in export-oriented industries. Now, that's the main thing. Now, our country, when we go and learn about the Sri Lankan national economy, you can see now how to overcome this present situation. Now, do you think only by going through this IMF bailout package, we can go ahead, proceed with our economy. No? We have to think those things. But these policies are related mainly to facilitate how to overcome that kind of economic crisis. Now, if we have a proper industrial policy adopted in Sri Lanka, we should not bring so many unwanted things from the foreign countries by spending huge amount of foreign currencies. Then international trade and foreign investment, ensuring high trade performance and increase global integration by creating business-friendly regulatory and operational environment while giving due consideration to the increased consumer welfare. Then other thing is tourism, transforming Sri Lanka as the world's most treasured island for tourism. Then road network, facilitating the economic growth of the country, creating an efficient road network, connecting large and emerging cities, townships, economic centers, and rural hubs while using safety and equity. That's also very important. Now, when you go to some areas in Sri Lanka, we are having a huge road network, but that road network they may not use optimally. Because most of the times our country political decision makers, they try to develop their road network within their areas, but that they have not focused about the overall development of the Sri Lanka and what kind of roads they should develop. That's the main thing. Then land and transport. Now, we will learn about something about the transport policy. Ports and shipping, making Sri Lanka the most competitive and preferred port and shipping destination in the region. I think that's the main important thing, and we should focus on that one. But that's our government, they may have not focused these things properly. Then aviation, transforming the country as the best air service provider to become one of the most popular tourist destinations in the region through a strong worldwide aviation network. Power and energy, ensuring energy security by diversification of energy resources and energy mix will be rationalized considering economic cost, environmental impact, reliability of supplies, convenience to consumer, and strategic independence. Now, this power and energy policy also we will learn in detail. Then irrigation and water resource development, ensuring water availability to water users, providing water in adequate quantities with improved management, enhanced productivity and water use efficiency while paying attention to spatial variation of water availability in the country. Now, here also very important thing. I think you may know now all these irrigation tanks, they release the water based on the requirements of the downstream. Now, that's the one way of managing the water resources, and their main objective is to provide the drinking water to the people. Then maybe they have to maintain the livelihood. That means people need the water to bath, maybe to clean their cleaning purposes, then maybe the agricultural things, then maybe we can get the power generation as well. That means we have to develop the water resources in a proper way. Then water supply and sanitation, that's also there. That means if we don't have the natural water, then the government has to supply the water supply for the drinking purposes as well as the sanitation purposes of the population. Now, for that, we need to provide the pipe-borne water, and that pipe-borne water also we should provide at affordable prices And also we should use those water resources in an optimum way without wasting these natural resources. Then housing and construction. Now I think you can see there are so many apartment complexes. Government is producing the apartment complexes for the poor people, and maybe they want to eliminate these slums in urban cities. They are trying to move these people into the apartments. Then that kind of policy you should adopt. And main thing is their main policy target is ensuring access to affordable, decent housing facilities for every family. Then urban development. That's also a very important thing. Now they have to, country has to develop. That means we have to redesign the existing unplanned and haphazardly developed cities as large urban centers. Now in most of our cities, they have not developed in a proper way. And every time they are trying to dig in the roads, they are doing deviations, they are doing that means they are changing the city patterns whenever the new minister comes, or maybe the president, maybe the prime minister, their personal decisions. That kind of thing should not happen. Now, if you go to the Colombo city, so many times they change some same roundabout. Okay, that kind of thing, it should not happen, because whenever they do this kind of modifications, ultimately our people tax money they are wasting. Okay, if you have a proper urban development, if you are doing all the things based on the proper urban development framework, that kind of thing may not happen. Then the judicial system, eliminating all economic, geographical, legal and procedural barriers. Then public management, that's also very important thing. Now you can see, now if you go to our main items, this is here, state enterprises management policy. Now under state enterprises management policy, why they adopt this kind of national policy framework? To achieve efficient country-free corruption. Okay, now that's the point they are trying to address from this public management, increasing efficiency and effectiveness of the public sector through empowering and motivating public servants and using modern technology and techniques while ensuring accountability and transparency in provision of quality public service. Now, transparency means eliminating the corruption. And if they introduce a system, automatically you can carry out the work by eliminating the paths to corruption. Now, just think about this, obtaining a passport. Or now previously, to obtain the passport, it's a very difficult task. That means so many people waiting outside the entrance of the passport office. They want to, they are coming and asking money to expedite the process and other things. Okay, once they adopt these appointment schemes and giving the reservation times, now there is a system. Now everyone knows what are the documents we have to take, what is the time we have to go there. Okay, maybe now present days we are having so many queues and other things. That's another story. But I am telling now, if now you can imagine if you do not have that kind of system, now at present, there will be so much corruption on these organizations. At present also there may be corruption, but still once they introduce the system, these genuine people, they can go through the system and get their work. Okay, maybe if you have to do some unethical work, maybe you will go through these other paths. That's a different story. But public management, now once they, not only the passport office, these RME, so many government officers, now they introduce online systems for payments, or maybe the reservation system that will, you can't say 100% elimination, that will reduce the paths to corruption. That's the most important thing by introducing the systems. Then social integration, rebuilding, reassuring, and re-establishing the harmony in political, economic, and social spheres among the people, and eliminating suspicion and distrust among communities in every corner of the country. Then the foreign affairs that I mentioned, our foreign policy is a non-aligned policy, free and progressive foreign policy, forging close ties of regional cooperations in order to secure stability of political, defense, economic, trade, and cultural spheres. Then environmental management, that's also very important thing, facilitating a robust economic growth through required investments while taking measures to ensure the quality of environment leading to sustainable development. Green development is the key word of the environmental policy, which embraces a pollution-free environment and toxin-free food habit. Then social protection. Now that's the other thing, law-abiding citizens. Implementing specific social protection schemes for all the necessary segments of the society, and also this welfare of the people, maybe providing pension schemes, maybe providing subsidies to the poor people, like Samudhi or whatever the way, maybe giving the financial aids to the low-income people. Those are the things. Then regional development, enhancing the living standards of community to decent level by identifying regional potentials, uniqueness, and diverse nature of resources, and effectively utilizing these resources. And I have gone through some key sector policies. Now you can imagine, I don't know in which kind of organization you are working. Maybe all of you are working in some organization, maybe a private sector or the government sector related institutes, or otherwise everyone, I think in your lifetime, you may have gone to a government institute to get some service. Then you can compare now these policies are there, whether actually these policies are implemented in a proper way to serve the people. That's the other main thing we have to think. Now, all the policies are defined and sector policies are also there, but whether those things are practically implemented and whether we are getting the benefits, or maybe whether we are getting the outcome from these organizations. That's the most important thing. But at least we should have this kind of policies. Otherwise, every government or every minister or every president, they may try to change these policies. Now, at least they are having a key policy frameworks, and they have identified the sector policies as well. But now the issue is their implementation arrangements, they are changing. Maybe now present education minister wants to implement one system. Maybe the next education minister wants to introduce another thing. But still, only main important thing is they are trying to change the implementation policies rather than changing the main key policies. But previously, I think previously means I think around 2018 up to 19. I think these policies were developed around 2019. Until that, whatever the government change, they are changing the main policy itself. But still it is there. I am not saying that they are not, they are using the consistent policies, but you can see what is the impact happen to the government without having the consistent policies in our country. Okay, now we see we in our country we had so many inconsistent policies. Now just think about the port city development also. Now under before 2015 government, they thought port city would be the future of the Sri Lanka. But as soon as the 2015 new government came into the power, they tried to stop the port city project. But later again, 2019, they started the project. Same government, they started the project. Then you can see what kind of impact to the society, mainly through the financial impacts. Maybe that has impact on the geopolitical issues, so many things. Now cancellation of the Sampur power plant, cancellation of this LRT, you can identify that kind of examples and see what kind of impact. Now, let's say if we have the LRT in place, maybe not immediately, maybe another 2 to 3 years time, we know we can save more fuel, and that will indirectly save a lot of foreign exchange outflow to buy the fuel. And people will use more public transport than the private transport system. Okay? Those are the decisions. Okay, maybe, and this organic fertilizer case. Now, up to that particular year, people use chemical fertilizers, as well as if someone wants, they use the organic fertilizer, and they had a very good niche market to sell their organic products in supermarkets or maybe some bigger shops, and they earn a lot. But normal persons, normal people, they may be able to access to the food items very reasonable manner. This organic fertilizer, but whoever used this organic fertilizer, they had a different market. But ultimately, whether you are rich person or the poor person, or whether your income is high or low, no one will access to have their basic food items at a reasonable price. That's that. Now present situation is like that. Those are the inconsistencies in the decision making. And other main thing is, whatever the decisions they are taking, those decisions should be sustainable decisions. Those things should not change by a sudden decision. These decisions, whatever decision they are taking, these decisions should be sustained for a long time. That means you should have a proper compromise. Maybe someone can say, okay, now in power sector, someone can say, okay, with only solar power, you can produce the required energy. But someone can say, no, only wind power. But someone can say, okay, only coal power. Maybe someone can say, go for a good energy mix. Okay, then you have to decide what would be your compromise. And that compromise, okay, maybe if the person is supporting for the solar power, he may not wish to proceed with the thermal power generation. If someone wants the wind only, then he will object to the solar power itself. But government should take a consistent decisions and say, okay, this is our energy mix, this should be our future, and we are going ahead with this kind of energy mix. Same way the transport sector. Now, if government wants to go proceed with the light railway LRT system, light railway transport system, then they should proceed that. Once you do all the things, and you should not cancel that kind of project. Once you cancel the project, that will give a huge negative impact to the country. Now, cancellation of the sample. Okay, maybe if government does not want to develop coal power, then they should not initiate that kind of thing. If they do not like the LRT, they should not initiate this kind of thing. Now, when you have these bilateral agreements with the different governments, and they spend so much money on developing these things, and suddenly they cancel this project. Those are the impacts of inconsistent policies. Now we'll go through some details about the national energy policy. And this national energy policy is published in 2019, August 9. This policy spells out ways and means of steering the energy sector into transition to power the nation and its social market economy. And I'm not reading everything. Now, what are the primary objectives of energy policy? Ensure energy security through supplies that are cleaner, secure, economical, and reliable to provide convenient, affordable energy services to support socially equitable development Sri Lanka. Now, this primary objective, it's mentioned, ensure energy security. That's the main important thing. You have to ensure the energy security through that are cleaner, secure, economical and reliable to provide convenient, affordable energy sector. That does not mean it should only from solar, or it should from solar and wind. Okay, maybe you can go for a cleaner fossil fuel as well. That means you can go for the LNG. If someone wants to go for a nuclear, that also you can possible. Also coal also you can possible. That means if you go to coal, then you have to tell to the power plant producers, we need this kind of compliances for our environmental conditions. That does not mean you should completely reject that particular technology. But you should not develop, okay, 100% coal-based system, 100% liquefied natural gas system. It should be a mix, proper mix. The national energy policy is thus founded on 10 pillars rooted in the broad areas impacting the society, economy, and the environment. Now we see, now here they have identified 10 main pillars on the national energy policy. First one is the assuring energy security. Now, whatever the energy policy you are talking, that should be assuring energy policy. Now here, do not think this is only a national electricity policy. This is energy policy. Okay, energy means all, including electricity and also the petroleum and other sources as well. Okay, assuring energy security. Primary and secondary energy supplies of the country will be secured to ensure continuity, adequacy, and reliability. That means the gas, maybe the fuel oil, then the electricity, all the things under this national energy policy. Providing access to energy services. Access to reliable, convenient, affordable, equitable, and quality energy services will be provided to all citizens to improve their living standards and to engage gainful economic activity. Now here, first one, assuring energy security, providing access to energy services. Now access means, now if you want to get the power connection for your house, there should be a location to access. That means easy access. Let's say to your house, if CB is telling, no, we do not have our distribution lines along that area, that means you are not accessible to the electricity. Okay, maybe if you construct your house in a very remote, maybe the mountain on the top of the mountain, that's maybe an exceptional case, but in average, in general case, it's not the case. Okay, then providing energy services at the optimum cost to the national economy. And other main thing is energy services at the optimum cost to the national economy. National energy services will be provided at optimum long-term cost to lower the burden on the national economy and to achieve competitiveness of locally produced goods and services in the international market. Now, that's the most important thing. Now, with our present electricity tariff, no one can produce a product to serve in international markets because our energy cost is too high and their production costs are very high, and the production, whatever the items they produce, these products may not be able to compete in the international markets because the international markets, they are having very competitive prices. And maybe now people may think, okay, it is worthwhile to import that particular item and consume in Sri Lanka rather than producing that particular product in Sri Lanka. Okay, that may be one situation, but that does not support for the local companies. Now, under national policies, one thing is to facilitate or enhance the local production. So to give a boost to the local industry. Then improving energy efficiency and conservation. That's also a very important thing. We have to improve the energy efficiency and the energy conservation. That's very important. Otherwise, you will waste a lot of energy, maybe through as a electricity or maybe as a fuel. Now, let's say if we are now, what are the best example for this energy efficiency and energy conservation? Now before renewing your revenue license, you have to go and do a fuel emission test. Now, why they request you to do the fuel emission test? That will indirectly measure the efficiency of your fuel consumption of the vehicle. Okay, by introducing this fuel emission test, now you can see, okay, majority of the roads, the vehicles, emissions they have control, also the improvement and the efficiency of the fuel consumption of the vehicle. Otherwise, they may have not passed the relevant test. Then the energy conservation means, now when you go and buy these CFL or the LED bulbs, maybe a refrigerator fan, there is a star rating. They have introduced in Sri Lanka. Now the star rating shows, okay, maybe 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, like that. Now, if it's 5 star, that means it's a energy efficient product. That means energy efficient light means it conserves the energy. Then enhancing self-reliance. Indigenous energy resources will be developed to the optimum levels to minimize the dependence on imported resources. That's also very important thing. Now, whatever the indigenous resources there in our country, we should adopt. Okay, one thing, maybe the wind, solar in the electricity sector, maybe the biomass, maybe tidal waves, those renewable energy development you can say. And other thing is if we have our own gas in Mana Basin, we should try to develop. Then we are enhancing the self-reliance. That means we are not dependent on the imported resources. Then caring for the environment. That's also a very important thing. But our main issue is by taking this item only, we are trying to stop so many projects. That should not happen. A meaningful contribution to climate change will be made by maintaining the low carbon intensity of the Sri Lankan energy sector. Now, when you say Sri Lankan energy sector, it's purely not only the electricity sector, it's a whole sector. Now, let's say, what is the best way to minimize the low carbon intensity? That means if we can electrify the railway system, or if we can go to the electrified transport sector, maybe compressed gas transport system, that will reduce the environmental emissions. Enhancing the share of renewable energy, that's also identified as the main point in the national energy policy. At present, previously we had in our system, we are having more than 50% renewable energy through, and because we are having the major hydros, but you can't maintain this 50% because every year you can see a demand growth. Now that demand growth, we have to cater that demand growth, we should have new power plants. Then how do you implement these new power plants? Maybe you can use a proper energy mix, maybe with the thermal base as well as the renewable base. Now here they mention you have to enhance the share of renewable energy. Now with that objective, government wants to have the increased renewable energy share. Then strengthening good governance in the energy sector. That's also very much important. Now when you compare the global energy sector, there are so many big companies, they want to invest on energy sector related investments. Now in Sri Lanka also, if you request companies to come and give a proposal to develop, let's say 100 megawatt solar park, 100 megawatt wind park, maybe the new refinery, so many companies, they will wish to invest in this infrastructure, energy infrastructure project, but they expect very transparent fairness mechanism. Now, in our system, we every time try to encourage the unsolicited proposals rather than the competitive bidding processes. Then, okay, there are companies, they prefer unsolicited proposals rather than the competitive bidding bids because they try to get the projects by doing all the unethical ways. And our political leaderships also facilitate those kind of things, because they try to give their directives. Maybe they want to change the acts and rules to accommodate these things. That means that, okay, maybe for a very short term, maybe these politicians or the governing party, they will achieve something, but that does not sustain, because to sustain that kind of investment, every time you should have the good governance in the sector. And because that's why one of pillar they have identified as a good governance in the energy sector. Then securing land and future energy infrastructure. That's also a very important thing. Now, let's say if you want to build a power plant, maybe let's say another 5 years time, now itself, you have to secure that land. Maybe if you try to secure that land, maybe another 5 years time, it may not be possible. And these pipelines, maybe the fuel pipelines, maybe the refinery locations, maybe the transmission lines, those things you have to secure in advance. Then providing opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship. That's also a very important thing. You have to develop your own R&D teams, and you have to encourage the local entrepreneurship. Now, these renewable energy projects, mini hydro projects, so many local entrepreneurs, they initiated these projects, and they may have gone to other countries and also carrying out the projects. Okay, and innovation aspects also you have to develop. Now you can see this national energy policy, these 10 pillars, those reflect some items in the national policy framework. That means not only some items, I think majority of the national policy framework items within this national energy policy. That's like a compliance with the national policy framework. Now here they have identified 3 main pillars. I think there are 10 main pillars, but these 10 main pillars, they have categorized, identified into 3 categories. One we call the energy security, then energy sustainability, and energy equity. Now 1, 2, assuring energy security, providing access to the energy services. Then the 9, securing land and future energy infrastructure, they have categorized under energy equity. That means equally these things should be distributed. Then under energy security, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And number 10. Then 6, 7, 8, energy sustainable. Okay, maybe someone can say, okay, this item should under energy sustainability, or maybe this one, but under this national energy policy itself, they have identified 10 pillars, and these 10 pillars are defined under 3 subcategories. Okay, I just want to give one explanation. Now, I have gone through several papers last time and previous time. When I request you to write down a question like this, let's say, what is the importance of having consistent national policies in a country? Then you should write down the answer, not only giving these 10 items in the national energy policy. Okay, because I have seen most of the students, they may think, okay, writing these 10 pillars and try to write down something regarding in each pillar. Maybe that means they are trying to memorize these 10 items. I am not expecting like that. Okay, this national energy policy is only a one sector policy. But let's say what my question was, what is the importance of having consistency policies in Sri Lanka. Okay, that consistency policy, there are so many things you have to explain. Okay, when you are trying to explain the importance, you can give some examples, maybe the cancellation of some coal power plant. Then you can say, okay, maybe assuring energy security, or maybe the providing energy services at the optimum cost to the national economy. Those are the things you can refer, but do not write these 10 items for that kind of question. Because if I ask, okay, what are the 10 pillars of national energy policy, you have to write, but do not expect that kind of question, because it should be a generalized question. Here, I know that not only the electrical mechanical students, there are other civil and other sector students are there. Then these questions would be a common questions, not related to any specific thing. Okay. Now, same way, we will try to learn about the national transportation policy as well. This national transportation policy, this is not actually gazetted one. Now, national energy policy, it was gazetted in 2019 August. This is a draft policy. I don't know why they have not gazetted yet. Maybe due to they may not able to come to a firm conclusion, but this is available as a draft national transportation policy. Now, their main objective, an efficient economic transport system is vital to sustain and enhance economic development and quality of life of the country. What are the objectives of the policy? This policy gives directions for the development of transport sector in Sri Lanka. It's expected to achieve the following objectives: demonstrate the need of transport infrastructure and services to be efficient and be in line with the development goals of national, provincial, and rural level in Sri Lanka. Provide necessary guidance to stakeholders in transport sector to improve transport system to achieve strategic objectives and priorities of the government. Now here, everyone has wrote something, but you may laugh, but these stakeholders, now who are the stakeholders? They think these private bus operators are the stakeholders, and in some questions they have mentioned the name also. Bus Gamunu is the stakeholder, but that kind of answer I have not expected. Okay, but now here stakeholders in transport sector is very wide. Stakeholders are there. Now, issue is now every news or whatever the program, we think our transportation sector means the CTB buses and the private sector buses. That's not the way this kind of policy should interpret. Okay. Now, when you give the examples, also try to give a overall examples rather than going into a very specific personal level example. Guide on the necessary investment priorities for achieving the expected outcomes in the transportation sector and achieve global trends in development targets. Provide a platform to enhance the efficiency in long-term decision making regarding infrastructure improvement and service management in transportation sector. Now, when you read this objective, you can see what kind of thing at least we have achieved under this transport policy objectives. I don't think they may have able to achieve at least 10 to 20% under these policies. Yeah, there is one question there asking, is there any possibility to implement the consistency national policy in Sri Lanka for long period, 25 years? Okay, normally you may have a long-term policy, but in the when you adopt the long-term policy, you have to identify what are the short-term activities. That means policy is it's like now for an organization, it's a visionary statement. Now it's a policy, is a vision. But how to achieve that vision, you should have the strategic objectives. Okay, maybe within these first 5 years, these are my strategic objectives. My second 5 years, these are my objectives. And other main thing is you should adopt the relevant changes to the long-term policy as well. Now that does not mean now let's say if you want to go for a power sector for a 25 years, that does not mean all 25 years you are having a fixed policy. Maybe you should update that particular policy, maybe let's say 2 years time or the 5 years time, that's okay. But whatever the projects initiated based on that long-term policy should not change. That's the thing I am trying to refer. Maybe no, now why you need this kind of long-term policy? Mainly, country should know what kind of direction country should drive and what kind of financial infrastructure we have to get it from, maybe from the foreign institutions, maybe the foreign investments. Now that kind of thing we should understand. Another thing is, let's say now we have 25-year horizon, you may never implement some highway projects, because highway project definitely to implement the highway project itself, it needs very long lead time. Maybe at least to start the highway project, there should be environmental approvals, there are resettlements, there are so many other environmental impacts you have to mitigate. For those things, at least you need 5 to 7, at least 5 years to start the project. Now, once you do all these studies, and if the government change that particular policy and say change now this central expressway, still we are not able to complete this central expressway, and they want the expressway to Ratnapura. They may have, okay, these words are there, but once they start these projects, once maybe the bilateral governments or the other institutions, they fund for the initial environmental studies, maybe the feasibility studies, then once the feasibility studies that will prove this would be a economical work to proceed, then government should start a particular project, and during the project until the completion, these things should not stop. Now, best thing is the cancellation of the LRP and the cancellation of the sample project. Okay, whatever the thing, once the government committed for a long-term project, it should not stop arbitrarily. That's the thing. And that's why we need the long-term policies, at least long-term consistent policies, and those things should not change. Now here, these are long-term projects. Both are long-term projects, but these long-term projects were stopped by very short-term visionary. Okay, that kind of thing should not happen. Now, are the policy principles? What are the policy principles in the national transportation policy? Accessible transport system. It's like similar to the national energy policy. That means it should be accessible. Then energy efficiency and environment protection. Now here, also do not think this transportation means only the CTB and private. Okay, all the other, almost maybe you can have inland waterway transportation system. Okay, inland flight, air transport system. maybe the efficient railway transport system. Okay, all the things you have to think about. Now, electrified transport, that means energy efficiency, that means electrified transport system. Increase safety and security. That's also very much important. Now, if you watch the news or maybe read the newspaper, you can see how many accidents happen. Then do you think it's a safety and security transport service in Sri Lanka? Those are the things you have to think. Okay, maybe you may think, no, it's a issue with the driver. Then do we have any training programs or any marking systems or maybe some other legal system to support this increased safety and security? Now, these things are in the documents. That's the thing. Positive contribution to the economy. That's also very much important. Now, when you read when you go through and see our railway department, it's a loss to the country. Now, every time it's losing. Maybe the CTV buses every time losing. But that should not happen. That means they should also having a positive contribution. That means they should have a cost-reflective tariff, maybe the efficient systems they should have. That's the main thing. Now, same thing, how do they get profit if we allow them to private sector? Otherwise, that they should work in a public-private partnership. That's the way government should adhere to these policies. Our issue is as soon as we try to introduce public-private partnerships, then these trade unions, they will protest or by saying now CTB buses, now government wants to privatize, or the train system, government wants to privatize. That's the way of people are behaving, because they think if they work under government, they will get their salaries and other incentives, whether they work or not. But that's the issue to develop our country. Integration of land use and transport planning. That's also very much important. Why this land use? Now, you have to, that's why I told you, you should use different transport systems. Another main thing is now transport hubs you have to plan. Now, these transport hubs, you should have the proper land use, not only to park the buses, maybe the other facilities you should adopt so many things. Then what are the policy goals? Promote the efficient movement of people and goods in order to support sustainable economic development. Promote social inclusion to allow equitable access to all. Provide safe transport system that minimize damages, injuries, and loss of lives. That's also very important. Now, in our country, no one can predict their lives when they go in a public transport system. Not only the public transport system, if you go your own vehicle also, maybe there's some irresponsible driver may cause a damage or maybe cause an accident, and maybe so many fatal accidents in our country. Protect the environment, sustainability, and improve health. That's also under national transportation system. Okay. With that, I will conclude the national policy part. I think there is another section, maybe for the national transportation policy and other things. It's a separate module, separate question, but here, that's why I clearly mentioned I am not asking anything specific to this national transportation policy or the national energy policy. I am not asking anything regarding like what are the policy principles in national transportation policy. Okay, maybe I know that there is another question specifically trying to give more detailed information on the transportation policy and that framework. here mainly I am focusing on the national policies and what are the importance of having the consistent national policy, and what would be the impact if you do not have the consistent national policy. So maybe if I can ask what would be the impact of inconsistent national policies, then when you try to explain those things, you can use these national transport policy and the national energy policy as examples and their pillars, and trying to explain the answer in a detailed way. And this question have two parts. One is national policy and the other economic side. Therefore, I am not requesting you to memorize anything, but just go through the content. That would be sufficient. Okay. Then shall we go to the, we'll start the Sri Lankan economy as well. And we have to do around, I think, more than 40 slides. Maybe definitely we have to continue for next day as well. Now here, before starting the details, I will just give us some snapshot. Now here you can see your screen left hand side. We are having the March data, March 2022 data. Left hand side, right hand side, you are having the November 2022 data. Now here it's like Q3 2021, because when I prepare this March 2022 slides, then during that time, these are the information we had available, but some information for March. And when I prepare today's lecture, I may not be able to get the present data end of December or whatever the thing. Only November data were available, because I think due to the severe financial crisis in Sri Lanka, they may not have obtained the correct information to produce this relevant information. Now, inflation, you can see in March, it's around 21.5. What is the NCPI means? National Consumer Price Index. It's 21.5. Now it's around 65. Okay, maybe someone can say this 65 is wrong. It should be 100%, 110, 120%. Okay, but whatever the things, I am using the central bank published data. Okay, and here in Q3 2021, Sri Lanka, our economic growth was minus 1.5. That means in Q3 2021 itself, our economy started collapsing. Okay, you can't say it has happened in 2022 after this Aragali or whatever the things, but before that itself, our country, I think, during the COVID period itself, our economic growth was in minus values. But now it has been drastically increased. That means minus 11.8. Okay. Now in March, our dollar price, they removed the ceiling. Previously it was 203, then 349, around 350. Now here they are having 362. Okay, but we don't know whether still they fix the dollar. But I think if they float the dollar, this is not the situation. Whatever the foreign currency they use to keep the dollar at around 362, 365 range, but actual rate may be around 400 rate. But now still they are trying to fix the dollar. Now policy rates, you can see it's 13.5. Now standing deposit facility rate, standing lending facility rate, that means these are the two rates banks central bank has given this policy rate. Now in interest rate, you can see that's a drastic difference in the interest rate. Now treasury bill 364 days. Previously they have given 23.7. Now that means treasury bills, central bank itself, they are providing. Now let's say normally we are not going and buying the treasury bills. These banks or big companies, they invest now once, but how they invest now, let's say how they get these treasury bills or treasury bonds by the banks. Now banks, they request people to deposit their money. That means they are giving FDs. Normally when now if you have, let's say 500,000 Sri Lankan rupees, you may think, okay, I will go and deposit. Now, previously, our fixed deposit interest rate was below 10, but now it's more than 25%. Now, how can these banks can give that kind of higher interest rates to you? Now, previously it was around maybe 5 to 10%, but now they are giving more than 20%. Now, how they can give 20%? Because now bank also wants to, to give now let's say if you invest 1 million Sri Lankan rupees at 20% interest rate, that means end of the year, bank has to give you 200,000 if you invest 1 million. Now, how that bank provide you 200,000? That means bank should earn more than 200,000 by investing in a different place. Now, bank will invest on maybe a treasury bill or maybe a treasury bond. Likewise, now here they are getting for less than 364 days. Normally for that we call it as treasury bills. And for some longer periods, we call it as the treasury bonds. If it's more than 1 year, we call it as a treasury bond. Now here for the treasury bond, they are giving 30.73. Now then bank can invest your 1 million, not only your 1 million, they will put advertisement and say, okay, we will provide attractive interest rate, let's say 22%, 24% to you for a 3-year fixed deposit rate. Then you may also think, okay, since this is a crisis situation, it is better to go and invest on a FD because you are getting, let's say 24% annual interest rate. Then bank will invest that particular money in some government treasury bill. That means 30% or like that they are getting. Now, do you think Sri Lankan government will survive on this? Now treasury means central bank. They are providing you 30%. Now, let's say for the less than 1 year, they are providing 28.7, almost 30% interest rate. Now, do you think central bank can invest that particular amount in a place where they can get more than 30%? They do not have that kind of place, and just they are getting that money and maybe they use for a payment of salaries to the people or whatever the things. That means ultimately banking sector will lead to a very crisis situation. Now, when central bank collect, let's say 100 rupees, they have to allocate as an interest payment, let's say 28.7 Sri Lankan rupees, and they are having effectively around 71%, 71 Sri Lankan rupees to carry out some activity. Maybe the bank, central bank wants this money. Okay, central bank or the finance ministry, they wants this money, maybe ultimately to pay the salaries of the government servants, or maybe to pay the pensions to all people, maybe pay to some of the payments of the low income group. Do you think that group will give you the return more than 28.7? Never. Okay, that means once that payment they have carried out to the some of the people or the low income people, that's a government welfare protection scheme, or maybe the salaries to the government workers. Okay, then automatically, but end of the year, you will ask from your bank, okay, I need my interest. Then bank will give bank has to pay you that interest. Now let's say if the bank promise you to give to 24% for the 1 million, your bank will put the 240,000 Sri Lankan rupees to your bank, and central bank has to give you, let's say if they invest on 30%, 300,000. Ultimately, you will get your money. Okay, bank may get the money, or sometimes central bank may say, okay, we may not able to give you full money. Maybe we'll give some part of the money. You have to maintain your bank survival by yourself. Okay, that's the thing now presently happen. People luckily now that then other option is now bank will increase the interest rate more because they want that particular person not to withdraw the money from the bank, because if they withdraw the money, bank has to give the money back. Okay, now that's the chain of crashing the whole banking sector. Now, other things, visa is somewhat similar. Unemployment rate, population is same, per capita income, it's, you can say, value-wise, it's different. But whether that per capita income having a, now they mention in March, it's around 3,682. Now, maybe 4,014, maybe some population wise, sometimes there may be an impact or whatever things. So maybe we may got more dollars. That maybe happen because once the currency is depreciating, our exports having a good market, that may happen. But only thing is, whatever the value we are getting to country, we may not be able to invest in a proper way due to a very high inflation. Okay. Hope this snapshot will clear. With that, we will proceed to understand the economic terms. Okay, we can proceed. Now, I think these words you should understand. Here also, I am not asking any relationship between the aggregate demand and these things, but when you write the question, you can use these things what you have learned and explain your answer in a more logical manner. Okay, if you can't understand anything, these terms and other things, no need to write any equations or anything. Just use the these names. Okay, that's sufficient. Now, when I explain to you that, you can understand this principle. Now, what do you mean by the aggregate demand? Okay, it's C. C is the consumer spendings on goods and services. Now, that means now you are spent on goods and services. I, private investments and corporate spending on non-final capital goods, factories, equipment, etc. That means private investment. G is the government spending on public goods and social services. Now, in a country, there is a consumers, consumers are spending on goods and services. Then private investments, private sector, they are investing. Then government also there, government also spending on public goods and services. And NX is the net exports. That means if we have the exports minus imports, or this NX could be plus or minus. If the exports are higher than the imports, then it should be plus. Okay. Now that's the simple equation for the aggregate demand. Now we are talking about the macroeconomics, not the microeconomics. In the macroeconomics, these are the things we have to understand. Then there are some other words also I want to introduce here. Gross domestic product. Now, words itself says it's a domestic product. Okay. Total market value of final goods and services produced within the country. Now, domestic means within the country. Okay. Gross national product means output produced by the country's residents, country's citizens. Now, this GNP, maybe now GDP you can calculate in an accurate manner because it's within the country, but GNP is equals the GDP is there. Also, there are Sri Lankan citizens. Now here, country citizens. Now country citizens means our people who are living in abroad, they also contribute to the Sri Lankan economy, and those things also we are considering. That means gross national product, GNP. When they calculate the GNP, there could be a lot of inconsistencies. Maybe we may not be able to get the correct information, but GDP we can calculate in accurate. Now, what do you mean the nominal values and real values? Now, nominal values based on current dollar terms. Okay. Based on current dollar terms, real values reference to a base year wage adjusted for the inflation. Now, real values means normally when you read the central bank report, all the values are based on year 2010 base year. They mention like that because they compare with some base year, but base year values they are adjusting for the inflation. It's like they will do some escalations and try to derive the real value. Okay. Now there is a nominal value. Nominal value means based on current dollar terms, but there are some real values reference to the base year wage adjusted for the inflation. Then interest rates also, you can see floating interest rates, the fixed interest rate. Now let's say now normally when you go and get the housing loan from the bank, they will first ask whether you prefer to go for a floating interest or fixed interest rate. Okay, it's like if when you open the fixed deposit also, you prefer for a fixed interest rate. Okay, but you can go for a floating interest also. Okay, now for the our foreign currency exchange rates also, you can have a floating exchange rates or the fixed exchange rates. Now previously until last year March, we had fixed interest, fixed foreign exchange rate called as 203 or 205. As soon as they want to float, then it suddenly increase up to around 370, 390. That means they have forcibly fixed that foreign currency rate. Whatever the things, floating means it will behave with the market forces, but fixed interest rates, it does not behave with the market forces. Now here, there are two other principles we have to learn. It's called the current account, capital accounts, and final accounts. Now here we learn about the aggregate demand. Now in the aggregate demand means that's the country's whole demand. Now whole demand, consumer spending, now that means individual spending, private investments, government investments, and the net exports. Okay. Now, same way, we can have the other term, we call it as the balance of payment. Now, that's the other term where we may come across during these times, because IMF is telling to do some stringent measures, or maybe the government wants to improve some our balance of payments. This word maybe you may have come across so many times. Now, what do you mean by the balance of payment? Now, here we'll go to the last line. BOP means current account balance. That's the government current account. That means overall country current accounts plus capital account plus final account. Okay, maybe there is a balancing item, that forget about that. Just think about what do you mean by balance of payment, current account, capital account, final financial account. If it's getting zero, that means your balance of payment is zero. Okay. Now, how do it become zero? Now, this is plus, this is plus, this is plus. That means there could be some sub-items that will lead to have the negative values. Okay, now we'll see how do you calculate the current account. How do you calculate the capital account? What do you mean by the financial accounts? Then you can see what is the present situation of our country. Okay, now current account means there are two things: visible trade accounts, invisible trade accounts. But whatever the things, you are having these visible trade accounts, imports, if the imports are greater than exports, now current accounts having these items. Okay, visible trade accounts and invisible trade accounts. Now, visible trade accounts having imports and exports. Invisible trade accounts, that means this visible means it's very clearly identified. But what is the imports for this particular month? What are the export? That means what is the value of the exports for this particular month? Then invisible trade accounts, okay, tourism sector, you may can able to calculate, but it may not visible like imports and exports. Remittances also there. The amount of money you will get, it's not like imports and exports. Then there are some interests. Now, Sri Lankan government also, okay, maybe I don't know whether our government is having that kind of reserves, but in other countries, they will invest on some other countries' investment opportunity. Then you will get the interest. Okay. Then other thing is Sri Lankan government provides services to the other countries. Then they are getting, let's say now airport aviation, they will provide the services to the flight handling. Maybe the fuel services to the flights, maybe fuel services to the other shipping lines. Those things we can call it as the services. Okay. Except imports and export, all the other things they will categorize under invisible trade accounts, because here major contribution for the current account is from the imports and export. Now here, do you think what would be our current account balance, whether it's a positive or negative current? Okay. Normally our imports are greater than exports. Then we are having a huge deficit. Whatever the other invisible trade account balances we are getting as revenues, if our imports are very high, then automatically our current account is a deficit. Okay? For that, maybe, I don't know whether we can do it today, maybe next time we can go and see the graphs and other things to get some idea. But here, today I want to introduce these terms to you. Okay. Then the capital account. Now, at present, our current account is deficit. Okay. Then capital account, capital inflows and outflows. Then if we have the capital inflows higher than the outflows, then we are having surplus. Then capital outflows greater than inflows, we are having a deficit. Then financial account, borrowings and reserves. Do we have more reserves than the borrowings? Then surplus, borrowings greater than reserves, deficit. Now, what could be the impact for our capital account and our financial account? Now, go for the financial account. Do we have reserves greater than borrowings? No. Now, we are in a very terrible situation. We may not be able to pay our loans itself. That means we are having a huge deficit. It's not a small deficit, it's a huge deficit in the financial account. And capital account also, we are not getting any capital inflows, but we have to pay all these interest for the previous loans we are taking, and we have to pay all the capital. Actually, in here, mainly we are focusing on the capital components of the loans. That means we have now, whatever the loan, let's say if we take a loan from the Asian Development Bank or the JICA or maybe the China Exim Bank, we have, if we define it as a capital, then we have to repay the capital itself. Okay. Now we are not getting the foreign direct investments, FDIs we are not receiving. And let's say if we carry out this, if we initiate this LRT in Sri Lanka, we are getting, okay, this Japanese government, they have to invest on Sri Lanka to develop this LRT in Sri Lanka, maybe at least 500 to 600 million US dollars, maybe more than that, 1 billion US dollars per annum, they have to spend. That means it's a capital inflow. Okay, maybe indirectly they are taking that money again as their services, maybe they are products, maybe they are trains or whatever the things, they will take that money back, but that will come as a capital inflow to our account. Then sometimes if we carry out that kind of work, then our capital account may be positive, but now at present it's a deficit. Then financial accounts means borrowings and reserves. Now so many loans we are taking as the short-term borrowings. Now we are requesting Bangladesh to give 200 million US dollars. Maybe China Exim Bank, we are asking 1.5 billion US dollars. Maybe the other foreign countries we are asking. And we are trying to have some reserves, but that reserve may not be sufficient because our borrowings are more than that. Then we are having a deficit. Then once you add all the things, let's say if we are having current account deficit, capital account deficit, financial account deficit, then our balance of payment is a measure of all the financial transactions flowing between one country and all other countries during a specific period. Now, that means now when you consider the Sri Lankan economy, we are getting some inflows, maybe through the inflows through the exports, inflows as a capital, inflows as a reserves. Then outflows is imports capital outflows and the borrowings. That means we have to pay all the things. Short-term loans, we have to settle all the things under financial account. Okay. Then automatically, now you can see our current account is deficit, capital account is deficit, financial account is deficit. That means our balance of payment is deficit. Now, how do we achieve at least this equilibrium? Okay. Now, first thing, from deficit to equilibrium, we have to achieve. Now, to achieve the equilibrium, easiest thing is we should enhance our exports. Okay. Now, if our country can enhance the exports, then that means we can have a positive surplus in the current account. But to enhance the exports, it may take time. Then what is the easiest thing? Now government is adopting limiting the imports. Now how do they achieve that? By giving a very aggressive restrictions on importation bans. Now when they adopt the aggressive importation bans, that means they will say, okay, we are not giving any foreign currencies to import these particular products. And also they are telling, okay, once they open a letter of credit, our banks will honor it, let's say after 6 months. Then no one will, no foreign company will accept that kind of terms, and automatically imports will limit. Now, during that time, if we can increase some exports, then there should be a chance to get some surplus in the current account. Then here also, capital accounts also, we can have a chance to have the surplus if we can enhance the inflows. We may not be able to immediately reduce the outflows, but we can have a chance to enhance the inflows if we can give more attractive packages to foreign direct investors, that means FDI, to come. Okay, or otherwise we have to limit the outflows. How do we limit the outflows? Now here, how do we limit the outflows? That means now IMF is telling the same. We have to restructure all our loans. Now, once you restructure our loans, these donors, they will say, okay, I will give you a 2-year grace period or 3-year grace period. That means very short term, we may able to have a surplus in our capital accounts, although we may not be able to enhance the inflows much. Okay, but if we can get the actual thing, should be we should enhance the FDIs instead of restructuring the loans. Now here borrowings also, now financial accounts, let's say if IMF provide you the 2.9 billion package, okay, maybe let's say 800 million or 1 billion in first year, then we will have it as a reserve, and if we can reduce the borrowings, that means they will give us stringent conditions to Sri Lanka not to obtain any further short-term borrowings from outside parties. You have to manage within your money within your country. Okay, then automatically we can have some reserves. Then we can have a possibility of have a surplus in the financial account, and we may able to have a path towards for the zero equilibrium or positive balance of payment. because to achieve that one, we should have a very stringent, very drastic decisions our government has to adopt. Now, these are the things they have adopted. When you try to explain this kind of thing, at least try to explain using these concepts. Now, what do you mean by the current account, capital account, financial accounts? Just think about imports. If imports is greater than export, it's a deficit. Then how do you control this deficit? That means to minimize the deficit, you have to enhance the exports, or you have to minimize the imports. That kind of way you can justify your question. Okay. Okay, shall we conclude for today, because this will be another topic and we will try to do it, I think, Wednesday, no? 8. Any other questions you want to know? These balancing items, I am not going into the details for that. If you really wants to go through, it's better to go through the central bank report. There are so many things, not a simple terms to explain it. Okay, because I am not going into the such level, but if you really want, I can explain it later. But here I am not going into the details, because here I am just trying to explain the concept of the balance of payment. Okay, there are so many things. Only thing is, I am not asking you to write the balance of payment equation, explain the balance of payment equation. That kind of question may not. Okay. Now, let's say if just a general question like how to achieve this balance of payment equilibrium using the IMF bailout package, that kind of question, then you have to explain all the things in a with use of this kind of concept. Okay, that's the way the questions will come. Okay. Any other things to clarify? Or otherwise, shall we conclude it? Then shall we stop it? If you have any questions, please ask. Okay. Okay, then we'll conclude for today. And I think 8 again, we are having the class. We will try to complete this national economy part. Okay, now national policy part I have completed. We will continue the national economy. It's pure. I have shared the notes. I don't know whether you have received it. If you have received it, please go through and come back. Okay, on Wednesday. Then we'll conclude for today. Okay, thank you very much.